Quirks are one of my favorite things to talk about when discussing the My Hero Academia universe. It's not a unique concept, with similar superpowers being common in both Western and Japanese entertainment. But in my opinion, My Hero Academia takes the idea and really makes it something special. Having said that, not all quirks are cool comic book material, and in fact, some are downright bizarre. So today, we're going to take a look at my top 10 weirdest quirks. Some of them are unusual in the context of the My Hero universe. Some seem like a strange choice for a specific character to have, and some are just objectively gross, weird, or even meta. Of course, this is all entirely my opinion, so if you disagree, that's okay. I will be focusing only on quirks that have appeared in the anime though, so if you want to talk about your own opinions in the comments, please keep that in mind. And please try not to leave spoilers from the manga for those of us who don't read it. Without further ado, let's start with number 10. Labravo's quirk Love isn't gross or bizarre, but it's unusual when compared to most others. Many quirks are more suited to a support role in battle situations, but a power that directly buffs someone else's strength or abilities doesn't show up often in the story. It feels like a video game ability in general. And when you consider that it's powered by love, with a heart motif, it can even be compared to a shoujo or magical girl ability. Overall, it's adorable and fits Labravo's character, which is why it only placed 10th. But for its genre bending, I thought it deserved to be on the list. Overhaul can take matter apart and put it back together with his bare hands in pretty much any way he wants. It could be a ridiculous overpowered quirk, but with his character, it really works. It's on this list because it's a bit over the top, and it's kind of gross the way he can just splatter things apart or fuse them with his own body. Additionally, it's unusual because of how adaptable it is. Most quirks of this nature seem to only be able to work on living things or inanimate things rather than both. But Overhaul can use his ability on pretty much anything, from throwing up concrete barriers from the ground to giving himself an enormous body from other people's flesh. Overhaul is not quite at the same level of strange as some higher up on the list, but for me, it's definitely weird. The process of decay is important in nature, but we're programmed to find it disgusting because rotten food can be harmful to us. So as a quirk, it's kinda gross and scary that Shigaraki can rot anything just by touching it, especially thinking about how it can rot living flesh. It honestly makes my skin crawl. Decay fits Shigaraki's character well, since he's supposed to be a weird and creepy villain. So this quirk is pretty much just on this list for the squick factor. On top of that though, it's the same as Overhaul's quirk, in that you'd expect it to only affect organic matter, but can be used on anything. This gives Decay an additional edge of rarity, but I don't think I can place it any higher just because of how well it suits Shigaraki. I think it's really cool that Sun Eater can transform himself based on what he eats, but in reality, it just ends up being a bit weird. Don't get me wrong, I love him as a character, but his most used weapons are octopus tentacles and clams. It feels like it doesn't quite match his character. A shy person who's known as one of the big three could have a really surprisingly badass quirk. Instead, he's waving around animal limbs that he ate earlier in the day. The fact that he has to limit what he eats so that he's always ready to fight makes me feel kind of sorry for him. Heroes do need to be prepared, but imagine having to always keep some KFC around just in case you need to fly somewhere. He's not alone and having to be careful about his diet though. For example, the quirk Sugar Rush requires eating lots of sugar, and fat absorption demands a high-fat diet. So Sun Eater's manifest quirk places 7th. Toga's transform quirk requires her to drink someone's blood in order to take on their appearance. I think it's an interesting and unique take on the concept of vampires, but let's be real, anything that involves blood in the My Hero Academia world tends to be a bit disgusting. Because vampires are such a popular monster in Western media, transform isn't the worst since we're used to the idea of it. But pair it with Toga's obsessive yandere personality, and the whole thing's a bit strange. She changes into people she likes so that she can be emotionally close to them. And she can't do that without physically hurting them to get their blood. Drinking someone's blood to feel closer to them is creepy on so many levels. So I hope I don't have to justify this entry any further than I already have. On her own, Toga is scary, but throw this quirk into the equation and she's downright terrifying in a Hannibal Lecter kind of way. Continuing on the blood is gross theme, next we have the teacher of Class 1B, Vlad King, and his quirk, Blood Control. This quirk involves the user controlling their own blood outside of their body, where they can also solidify it. It's useful to pin down opponents, and Vlad King always has his own blood to hand. but it's objectively disgusting. I'm going to say it again, he has to take blood out of his own body and move it around and freeze it. That's it. That's the quirk. Most people can barely stand the sight of their own blood, and lots of people faint or feel sick when they look at it. Just the thought of having to move your own blood around outside of your body makes my stomach turn. I feel sorry for his parents when this quirk first showed up. Like, how would you even deal with your kid bleeding everywhere and throwing it around? It's gross, it's weird, it deserves to be pretty high on this list. Vlad King is still a great character though, and I have to give him respect for how well he uses his quirk. If you didn't cringe when you first saw Moonfish use his quirk, Blade Tooth, you're made of strong stuff. In case you've forgotten him, since season 3, Moonfish's quirk lets him grow his teeth into blades. They can get incredibly long, and he uses them to move around the field as well as to attack. This is another quirk that I think qualifies as objectively weird, because it's such a random power to have. I'd understand if he just had very sharp teeth or could grow blades out of his fingers or something, but to grow blades out of his teeth? It's a strange image. And I'll say again that it is a huge cringe factor, since the blades can be snapped. It makes me think of teeth snapping, which is horrible. And when he balances on them, all I can think of is what the pressure must be like on his gums. Poor guy. I'll bet some of you expected to see Mineta on this list, and here he is. At number 3, we have Pop-Off. This Quirks makes it so that Mineta can pull sticky spheres off his head and attach them to anything he wants. If you think about it for too long, the entire concept is so random and weird that I'm almost not sure how to describe it. He grows sticky balls on his head instead of hair, and at some point in his childhood, he discovered that he can pull them off and that they grow back. Also, for some reason, he doesn't get stuck to them himself, but bounces off them instead. Say what you want about Mineta, but love or hate him, you can't deny that his quirk is bizarre. I'll give him props for how well he uses his quirk though, and seeing how much he's grown to this point is great. Aoyama's quirk was a strong contender for first place, since his whole character is pretty strange. In that sense, Naval Laser suits him and his show-off personality. This quirk does what it says on the box. It fires a sparkly laser from Aoyama's stomach. It's speculated that this quirk is based off the X-Men character Cyclops, with several similarities between the two abilities. But the fact that it comes from his navel rather than his eyes is what makes this quirk so weird. He also has to wear a special belt to control the power, and if he uses it for too long, he gets a terrible stomachache and intestine problems. I think digestive issues might be one of the more unfortunate sides of a quirk, and it definitely plays up the comedy in contrast with such a sparkling, glamorous attack. Ultimately, I wanted to rank this so high in the weird factor just because of how random the words Naval Laser sound together, and how strange Aoyama is overall as a quirk user. My pick for the number 1 spot might come as a surprise to some, but I'm going with Manga Fukudashi and his quirk, Comic. There's something kind of cool about Comic, but it's the fact that it's so meta that makes it weird. Throughout My Hero Academia, there are moments of the fourth wall being broken, usually coming from Bakugo, but Comic takes it to another level. As a quirk, this power takes a spoken word, usually an onomatopoeia, and turns it into a physical object with the same properties the word describes. So if you say boing, the word boing shows up, made up of a springy or bouncy material. It's the same kind of power that Levi uses in Fairy Tail if you're familiar with that. What makes it so mind-bending in My Hero Academia though, is that there are so many layers to it. First, the character is named manga. First seen in the manga itself using sound effects that are used in manga to show what's happening. And the story itself is inspired by comic book heroes, and comic books use the same kind of effects. The manga, being adapted into an anime, now has manga sound effects used more dynamically through his quirk. And manga himself is designed to look like a manga panel. It's so weird, but in such an awesome way that I had to give this quirk the spotlight. That about does it for my top 10 weirdest quirks. It was really fun to go back through some of the earlier moments in this series to revisit some of these, but I'm sure I might have missed a few that you think are weird enough to be on this list. So be sure to tell me your own rankings in the comments. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and stick around for more awesome anime content.